Once you get indoors, into a club atmosphere, and even in a YMCA atmosphere, which isn't as elite as a club, although today with racquetball clubs being so prevalent, it's no longer only elite places, but there seems to be a more genteel atmosphere indoors, and outdoors brings out the rough and ready, if not necessarily the play for your blood, at least more kibitzing and more rooting. I see matches of today, a national championship. There's hardly any sounds. We used to scream for each other. I mean, after the point, the protocol was always when the point's over, you can say whatever you want. During the point, you're not supposed to say anything.
I heard some very heavy and raucous arguments between yourself and Steve Sandler on the videotapes I've seen.
Yeah, I know the tape you're talking about, and we actually on the court we were enemies. We were good friends off the court. Sometimes what happened on the court would carry off the court, but we were playing to win. It was real important to win. I mean, as an example, Stevie and I would play for $20 a game and kill each other to win, or kill ourselves to win. Whereas we would play cards for far more than that and play all night long because one guy was behind and the other guy would play all night to give him a chance to come back. One of us would be behind $1,000 and the other guy would keep playing until the other guy won it back.
Now, I have heard that I have heard that you're a mathematician and that you went to Princeton in graduate school.
My degrees are in math. I worked at Princeton University on a control system for a thermal fusion test reactor.
So you must have a double view of the life of a warrior because you have another life.
Well, we all have other lives. I mean, very few of us just live handball. I'm married. I have a couple of children.
Yeah.
I have a job. But handball has always been an integral part of my life.
Now, can I ask you this? Do you miss or are you hungry for the kind of focus that a warrior has, that total focus on what he has to do, and that incredible intensity of consciousness that happens?
Yeah, I do miss it. That's why I'm here. I miss Brooklyn. I miss the people. Where I live, it's Tinseltown, it's L.A., and all of the stories you hear about it are true. It's a town of phony people. If a New Yorker doesn't like you, you're going to know about it. In L.A., they'll say, "Oh, how good to see you," while they stab you in the back. So, I miss real people. I miss emoting. I carried on a little bit, very little when I played today, but it's not the kind of thing I usually do in a four-wall court. It's almost real strange for people to scream at calls or get real excited. And here it's just a rule, and it's really almost a matter of ethnics emoting, as opposed to restrained, inhibited emotions.
So you think it's a class thing?
A class?
Yeah, because you said it's about a group of ethnics emoting.
I think a lot of the people who played one-wall handball were ethnics. A lot of them were Jewish, and now Hispanics, and Italians. Joe D'Urso is Italian, and it's a known fact that ethnics are more prone to show emotions than people of the majority group in this country.
So maybe could we speculate that perhaps the reason that handball hasn't become as popular as it might have been is that it's kind of raucous and uncivil in the way that an urban experience often is.
I think there's probably an element of that. On the other hand, you take a sport like squash, which never really made it any place, and that sport is pushed by the Ivy League types, and it's a sport without a lot of color. I think that somehow if handball were introduced into the consciousness of the American viewing audience, in the appropriate way, that this color would really make it, it'd be a plus rather than a minus. Instead of, it'd be like watching a whole bunch of McEnroes, who to me, whenever he was chided as being the bad boy of tennis, I would laugh because he'd be like a choir boy compared to us. I mean, he was nothing. He'd tell the referee, hey, I think you need glasses or something like that.
That's nothing.
He hardly did anything at all. And they made such a big deal about it.
How do you think the country, or how do you think in California, how would they react to Steve Sandler and how he talks? With his kind of Damon Runyon-like style.
The Damon Runyon style would be okay. I mean, I guess if we cursed, which we did, that isn't acceptable. It's not acceptable in prime time, and it wouldn't fly. We're seeing this spitting incident with Roberto Alomar.
Right.
And there has been a famous spitting incident in handball, which I don't want to go into. A similar thing. It was a terrible thing, actually. In fact, I've often said that was the worst thing I've ever seen. Where a player spit into the face of this elderly referee who was really a very nice man.
So, as you look back on your life, there's a kind of a curve that an athlete has where he's at the prime of life, maybe at 20 or 25. But you have the other side where you've gone on, where you've grown. So in your two lives, you've had a couple of different curves. Are you conscious of a sense of loss, on the side of the warrior, on the side of the athlete?
Well, I mean, when I get on the court...
Is there something going on here at this court?
Yes, there's something going on.
I'm sorry.
When I get on the court and I'm playing, 1/5 of the court,
yeah,
and I'm a detriment. I'm the weak player on the court, and I'm just fighting to hold my own to get the ball back, and not reacting quickly enough to make an offensive shot. When I see it, I see the shot, but I'm 57 years old, and I don't react like I did when I was 25.
Right.
I mean, that's...
Is it painful?
It's demoralizing. I mean, it's understandable. I don't expect to be able to. I had somehow felt, that I could perform a little better than I did today. Perhaps I will tomorrow. We did manage to eke out a victory. I made a few shots here and there, but if I had to judge the game objectively, obviously, I was, being carried by my young partner, who's a great handball player.
Yeah.
So, I don't like to be in that position, but still, I'm giving it a shot, one last hurrah, and seeing what'll happen.
Yeah, I felt that Steve Sandler, even as he started to lose his skills, still had the heart and the mentality of a lion, of a champion. And his will was so strong. And I wonder if you share that kind of will to be powerful and to be marvelous and to be dominant.
Well, I had the will to be dominant, but there's one thing that Stevie had that I didn't have. He had an ability to push through fatigue or whatever was paining him. I mean, I've seen him play against Oscar Obert and say, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, and he was pushing and pushing through. Whereas I had probably a tragic flaw. Number one, I didn't have great stamina. I never even knew the meaning of conditioning, and it was a notorious joke, that Howie was a 2-1 favorite in the first game and a 3-1 underdog, for the match.
Right, if they made it to the third game.
And part of it was, I just didn't have that ability to push myself when I was tired, and in retrospect, I think it was a matter of, it was a combination of things. I mean, I think I worked harder on the court than Steve. My philosophy was the harder you hit the ball, the harder it is to return, and every opportunity I had to hit the ball hard, I would. And then, it took more energy to do that, and then I was always looking for a fly kill, and Steve was content to let the ball bounce and move the ball around on the court. So, but apart from that, even given the same level of fatigue, Steve would push through it. Marty Decatur was another one who transcended his abilities by his tremendous will to win, and was able to, push through fatigue.
Is there something about that spiritually that you value, that will, that indomitable quality, that kind of leonine quality?
I'm not so sure. I mean, it may,
There's another side, right?
it may have been, like a misguided, a thing where I'm, trying to prove something, but who knows what reason to prove my superiority. I don't know that it was, in the right focus. I suppose it's a great thing. The fact that it was so very important to me. I don't know how wonderful that was. Unfortunately, my son has inherited, or at least by environment, acquired the same sort of penchant to be perfect. I mean, I didn't really have a penchant to be perfect. It was to win. His has gotten even worse. He led Southern California high schools in hitting 760. And that wasn't good enough for him because he didn't hit 800. He punched a wall when he had an opportunity to hit 800 in the last game of the season, and he went 2 for 2. And then if he wanted for another 2 hits, he would have gotten 800. But he happened to hit a check swing pop-up, and he couldn't hit 800. And he has emotional problems because of this penchant for perfection. So I don't even know that it's a positive.
Right. Of course, Alan.
Just talk.
Yeah.
How do you rate the players of yesteryear, your time?
He's already asked me that question. No, he's already.
All right. Now, actually, that hunger for perfection, it seems to me you can have it in so few areas in life because life is so complicated. Is there something tragic, and I mean, obviously it's tragic if it's caused your son a certain amount of anguish, but isn't there a kind of a wonder and a beauty to that also? Or do you feel that about your son? That his drive is on a certain level almost?
I think if it's properly channeled. Unfortunately, in his case, at this point, it's not properly channeled. But it conceivably, could be what makes him a major league ball player.
Okay, I'm gonna.
It certainly is what made Stevie a champion, what made Decatur a champion.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a last question, and I want to thank you for your time, Howie.
My pleasure.
Are there theaters of life now in which you can throw this focus and ferocity and warrior spirit?
That I can focus on
Yes.
philosophy?
Outside of handball.
Perhaps in my younger days, it would have been more applicable. I have to say that I've mellowed, even in things that are real important to me. I still want to achieve, what I'm setting out to achieve, but not with the same fervor that I was to win a national championship in handball.
So you've changed, and you don't want to do it.
No, I mean I just I'm not in that mode anymore. To achieve the goal, die trying. I'd rather achieve pretty much what I'd like to, and if it isn't quite optimum, that's still okay.
Okay, and you've got a tranquility now that's quite fine. Had you had it then?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, that was Howie Eisenberg, the great champion. Could I ask you, Ken, how do you feel about the players today? Are they comparable to?
I've really been away from handball for quite some time. I think that when we played, we were a little bit better. We had more players then. We had a centralized place to play, and we played each other more often. So I think the players, when we were playing, were better. It sounds like an old-timer, but I think that's really the case.
Well, if you didn't sound like an old-timer, we'd have to worry.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, how did you develop that tremendous hard service and the tremendous ability to hit the balls as hard as you did? How come you could hit the ball harder than everybody else?
Well, it's like asking why did Sandy Koufax have a better curveball, or why did Bob Feller throw the ball faster than everybody else? To some degree, it's a matter of genetics.
So it's pure talent.
I think that it's within limits is talent. And then I started playing handball because of my father, and I started at a very, very young age. So I think when you start at a young age, you have certain advantages because the reflexes become automatically. I started playing handball when I was 6 or 7. So just like Andre Agassi, for example, started playing tennis when he was very young, I started to play handball.
And your father taught you how to play?
No one ever really taught us. We just played. I guess it was all just by playing. There were no formal lessons. I grew to love it. I remember one time, I must have been about 10 or 11, and I used to go to this park called Lincoln Terrace Park. It was a fantastic park in Brooklyn, and I remember it was December, and I felt like playing. It was 19 degrees out. So I hopped on a bus. I lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant in those days. And I got on the bus, and I traveled a half an hour, and I got off the bus on St. John's and Rochester Avenue, I think it was, and I went to the park. And I got to the park and I went inside and there was no one there to play. And I said, well, how come there's no one here to play? It was 19 or 18 degrees and they certainly had good reasons, but not in my mind. So I went for hot chocolate and turned around very disappointed and went home. So it was more the love of it more than anything else that I think made us get better. It was never a formal coach or teacher.
Change something here. Okay, now, can I ask you, at those games at Lincoln Terrace Park, they were very hard fought.
Well, we used to bet on the games, so every game was like a tournament. It was exciting. And then later, Lincoln Terrace sort of died, and we used to go to Avenue P Park, and we used to play. Steve Sandler used to be there, and Howie Eisenberg used to be there, and we'd have match games, and every game was hard fought. And then during the winter, we'd play at the Hebrew Educational Society, and all the better players would be there. Winfield Balance would be there, and we'd play amongst each other. And it was so much fun. It was the greatest time of my life. And everybody at that time, I think, who played at that time and went to the places that we did, loved the game so much. It was fantastic.
Now, had you found as you started to play a match against a better player that you changed, that you had to adapt?
Sure, you can only be as good as the people you play against. Maybe a little bit better. And the thing that we had that the players now don't have is that centralized location where everybody congregated and played. That's what it seems to me. And that's why I think maybe we were a little bit better than they were.
Now, if you play against a player with a weakness, let's say they have an opposite hand that's not so good, they haven't got an overhead, you can attack it. But is it a very different strategy to attack a player that has no weaknesses?
Every player has a weaknesses. One aspect of his game is weaker than any other aspect. And you had to attack that part of his game that was most weak. And that, in addition to that, maybe you couldn't attack his weakness because your style didn't allow you to. So, every game was different. I think that what I had may not have been the greatest physical talent, but I think I was very good in analyzing the game and finding the weakness and how to attack the weakness of players.
How did you attack Vic Hershkowitz?
Vic was before my time.
So you didn't have to attack him.
I didn't have to attack him. Howie Eisenberg was my time. Stevie Sandler was my time. Marty Decatur was my time. Oscar Obert was my time.
How did you attack Oscar Obert?
Well, Oscar was the easiest for me because my weakness was stamina at one point in time. And with Oscar, he'd serve the ball, he'd kill it, and the rallies would be very short. And he didn't have a good serve. So Oscar was just brute force against brute force, I think, and my serve was much, much better than Oscar's.
So all you had to do was to play your game, in other words?
Play my game, yeah. Right. I had very good angles. I was able to drive the ball at very big angles off the court. And Oscar was sort of easy. I found Carl to be much more difficult than Oscar.
Of the hops?
Not the hops. He kept the ball in court longer and the rallies were harder to fought. So I would say from a physical basis, Carl was the most difficult for me of the three Obert brothers.
How did you attack the third Obert?
I never played Ruby.
You never played him?
No, I played him once in a park, in Crotona Park, and he beat me one game. but I was about 18 at the time.
How about Steve Sandler? How would you go with him?
Stevie was, the first time I played Stevie was in the Mirror Park tournament. I was 16 or 17 and he was about 18 or 18, and Stevie had just begun to play, and Stevie had no left hand. As great as his left hand was at his peak, his left hand was so weak at that time.
Really?
All you had to do to Stevie was get it to his left hand. He couldn't hit the ball.
No kidding.
But he was so fast, he'd run around that hand. So what I did at that time, I served overhand. Because I was weak at 16, I had no serve. My hand was an overhand serve, deep to the right. I'd pull him off the court, and then I'd go to the wall and plunk it in the left-hand corner, and that's how I beat him then. But later on, once again, it was strength against strength. He was very tough, very steady. Every rally was very difficult. I had a better serve than Stevie's until I stopped really playing, and it was power and power.
Right. Now, how did you feel as you started to decline and you stopped the play? Had you missed the sport? Had you missed the ferocity and the warrior-like attitude that you had out there, the intensity of consciousness?
Well, I stopped playing in 61, let's see, 63. I went away to college. I didn't go to school right after college, right after high school. At age 21, I went back and I went to school in Florida, and they didn't have handball there, so I stopped playing. And then I played for the summers. And in 65, I won the championship again. And then I went to the University of Texas and I played four-wall, and I was never that good in four-wall. And then I came back to New York and played one-wall again, but I had a job, and working and playing handball and playing at your peak physical abilities are diametrically opposite. Sure. You really can't do both, so I was never as good. Again, then I hurt my back, and I tried to play again, and it wasn't worth it. Do I miss it? I found other things that I like to do. I went to paddleball because it was easier on my back. And there was competition there, and then racquetball, and there was competition there, and even now I play tennis, and I play in leagues, and I play 3 times a week, so there's always substitutes. I think what I miss most the carefree times that we had then, because when I was playing handball at my best, I had no responsibilities, I had nothing but handball on the brain, and the times and people, we all had the same thing in common. It was a fantastic time, and that's what I miss the most. And it's coming back here today. I don't come here very often. I see some of the old faces that I saw 30 years ago. It's that's what makes it for me more than anything else, to tell you the truth.
You know, it seems to me that you have a certain kind of tranquility about you. Had you had that as a handball player?
What do you mean by tranquility?
Well, you seem very quiet and happy.
I'm happy.
Right, happy is the word.
I have 2 great children. I have a good wife. We're okay financially. I'm happy.
Right.
I am happy.
Right. I mean, if I compare you, let's say, to Steve Sandler, he seems always questing, and his makeup is so different than yours.
Everybody's different.
Yeah, that's true.
That's me. But
Right.
I'm not as tranquil as I look.
Right. Now, could I ask you this? Well, I'll take your word for it. Could I ask you this? How do you compare the one-wall and the four-wall game? And how is it that certain people can adjust, like Oscar Robert, and others have a lot of trouble adjusting?
I don't know. I really don't know. I was okay, but I had trouble with four-wall. I couldn't get the backball.
Oh, yeah, right. That's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I found the backball to be very difficult.
And that's everything. You know, those guys, they know exactly where it's going to be. They set up for it.
And when I didn't play four-wall really till I was 23, so, a lot of the reflex actions are ingrained in you. I tend to hit the ball too straight in four-wall, and didn't take advantage of the sidewalls. But
You were
mostly it was
thinking one-wall.
Pardon me?
because you were thinking
Oh,
one
sure.
wall?
I was reacting one wall. Three wall I did pretty well. I was a pretty good three wall player. There was no back wall. But
Right.
one wall was my forte.
Yeah. All right. I'll ask you a last question. How did you like playing? Had there been a certain kind of intimacy or intuitive sense of Howie Eisenberg that you developed as a result of being his doubles partner?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. Had there been a certain kind of intuition as you played with Howie as to where he was going to be, as to what he wanted to take?
Oh, we had very complementary games. He was a very, very powerful hitter, and he let me take over most of the doubles court most of the time. We knew what we were doing, and mainly what we were doing was hitting the ball hard. So, we hit the ball at the right time and knew what to take, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Kenny
My pleasure.
Davidoff.
Thank you.